Hi, it's Jaap Kalkman from Skeena Fly Supply. I get a lot of questions about how I fish my dry flies and what kind of a dry fly rod, reel, rig that I use. So I thought I'd go over it with you guys so it's all on one video. Let's start with the reel, just any kind of reel. I like a reel with a drag, but it doesn't really matter that much. If you want to have an exposed rim for braking, is fine too. Then I fill it up with about 300 yards of backing. Any kind of power braid is fine. I usually use about 60 or 80 pound power braid. Then I use a bimini twist at the end of the power braid and loop a running line on there, or shooting line. I prefer guide line, comp line, and you can get it in different thicknesses depending on how heavy of a line you're going to fish. For a 7-8 line, I like the 35 pound test comp line. That's a flat monofilament shooting line, running line. In that running line I will make a loop with a non-slip mono knot. The loop I leave quite long so I can pass my reel or shooting heads through the loop. After the running line I loop on my floating fly line. That could be a DDC Connect from Guideline. Is really one of my favorite lines. It's about a 27 foot multi-tip line, and I use it for dry fly fishing too. Another good shooting head for dry fly fishing is the Power Taper floater from Guideline. Alternatively, you could go with longer heads, like medium length heads of 50-60 foot and longer rods, if you want to do less stripping and more longer bellied casts. After the shooting head I use a tapered monofilament leader, and I use as long of a leader as possible. I usually get about 15, 16, 17 foot leaders, and at the end of that leader I tie about a 12 pound test tippet of about 3-4 feet. As soon as that tippet gets too short from tying my knots to my dry fly, then I will replace that knot. So I do quite a long time with a tapered leader. Then at the end of that I place my dry fly. I always use my dry flies of my Seek and Destroy series. They're my favorite dry flies by far. They float all day, you don't have to grease them, you don't have to riffle hedge them. They have an excellent commitment from the steelhead and they attract well. I do them in two colors. One like this color is the more like natural brown sage color, stonefly color, for brighter situations and clear water like we have today. Or I have a black pattern with a fluorescent green body for low light conditions. The bigger pattern I use for searching, and if I get a refusal on the bigger pattern I switch to the smaller pattern. And for a rod I like to use a little switch rod. This is a Guideline LXC 11.6 8-9 weight. I like the little bit of heavier weight rather than a 7-8, so that I can still have some extra control over fighting fish, and it's not too wimpy for these fairly big fish that we can get here. I like to use the switch rod, the 11.6, because it's just a nice change from the longer rods that we often use here for fishing heavier lines, heavier sink tips. And it's very pleasant to fish a day with a really light, shorter rod. It's very versatile rod. I use mostly airborne casts when I dry fly fish. On a run like this that we see here, you have a current that's fairly even and fairly wide, and I use either a snake roll and a 45-degree out, or single spay, 45-degree out, and then I just let the fly skate across on the 45-degree, very little mending. So the shooting head is fine for me for that. I don't need to have a lot of control over my mending. I just let it from 45-degree come into shore. I don't do any activity on the fly with my rod or line. I don't jump it or anything. I just let it steadily come across. I find that gives it better takes that way. And that's rough and dirty how I fish it. It's really quite straightforward. I think the dry fly is the pattern itself is quite key. You don't want a pattern that sinks all the time, or that is excessively big and noisy and just gets fish that slash at your pattern. And I think that's rough and dirty how I most of the time fish my dry flies. If you are interested in following more of our YouTube videos, you can subscribe on the subscription button that's below this video, and come visit us at our website www.skeenariverflysupply.com.